right, so it's recording now. Okay, it's recording, audio is on. So again, as I said, remember the exam is on Tuesday. Exam 2, remember it'll be comprehensive. Pretty much everything we've covered from the beginning of the semester up until what we covered today, basically. So let's go ahead now and share the whiteboard. Right, and as you know, we talked about IP tables. So I've pretty much covered that topic in full at this time, except for the port forwarding scenario, which is an interesting scenario. And so I'll go over that. Now, in the documents that I posted on Brightspace, if you've had a chance to read through them, you probably saw already some information related to that as well. Okay, so I strongly recommend that you read all those documents. That should be of use to you. All right, so the last scenario that we're going to talk about related to IP tables. Oops. So the last topic related to IP tables, okay, will be this scenario of port forwarding. So it's an interesting scenario. It's a, I think it's a fun one. It actually, for this scenario, you actually need 2 IP table rules. Okay, so you need 2. So 2 rules basically. Okay, so the scenario, let's think of it first. So the best scenario here is think of your home setup, right? So you're at home, and so you have basically, let's imagine this is your router at home. Okay, and the router, of course, has the 2 network interfaces. So this one's connected to the, your ISP basically, or internet service provider. So that really means the internet. Okay. All right, so this means the internet, or let's call it the web. Okay, and then here the scenario is that you would have an external server or an external user of some kind. External, right? User, but this user wants to PuTTY in, so they want to use PuTTY, right, or SSH, some service, but they want to basically SSH from a Linux or a Windows into your home environment, right? In your home environment, you usually in the back of your router, you'll have, a switch of some kind, some ports. So you'll have a few ports in there, right? You have your ports in there, and then you have some nodes connected here, right? And in particular, you have, some kind of a server, right? And then maybe here you have a FTP server or SSH or web server, one of those, right? So you have one of those. You want to reach this, this environment, but you want to reach it from the outside. Now, of course, you have, the firewall there that does not permit this to happen. Right, so you have a firewall in there, and we're going to think of the scenario of IP tables. So usually here, then, one of the things that would happen is that by default, remember that this relates to the forward chain. I'm going to change colors now. The forward chain here is the one in question, because you're sending packets from one network interface to another, right? And so that means forward, and usually this forward chain by default does not allow anything that initiated outside to come into the network, right? So it implicitly denies. Therefore, if you remember, because of implicitly denied and explicitly accept, we actually need a rule for that. So one of the rules is actually to allow that traffic to happen, okay? The other rule has to do with the mapping of because you're going to come in, you're going to initiate your traffic from over here through the web. You're going to hit something here on the external interface of the router, and then that has to be mapped to the inside and all the way to there, right? And that's going to be the second rule, and that rule relates to just that mapping. So it's going to be associated with network address translation, all right? So that's going to be the chain in question or the table in question, okay? So that's really the idea with this scenario. Port forwarding just means that you're going to hit this one over here, and you're going to be forwarded into the network. All right, you need to have a port open basically on your router that only allows to go in there. Now, keep in mind that's insecure, right? To have open ports on your firewall, so that would be, I should stress, that's an issue that a better approach would be to use VPN or something like that. We'll talk about that. That's the last topic of the semester. But before we get to VPN, and all that, we can take a look at it from this point of view, just, port forwarding like this. All right, so basically, now hopefully you see the diagram here, and hopefully this makes sense to you. So then, what do we need? So we need, two tables. So we need two tables, okay, which are going to be the NAT table that we talked about. If you remember in the very beginning, we talked about this one. And in particular, in the NAT table, we are going to need the can you guys hear me? Cut out a little.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. So in this, for the NAT table, we can use the pre-routing chain. Okay. Actually, get rid of that. Oops. So pre-routing chain. Okay, the pre-routing chain is the one that we would use. And this basically, as I said, this does the mapping. So this is to do the mapping, okay? So we want to do the mapping here for this particular case. So the idea is that the packet comes in from the external router port. Okay, so it hits the external router port, and it goes through the router to an internal PC port. So an internal PC port. Okay, so that's basically the idea of how this would happen. So that's that's one rule, and I'll show you guys how this rule can be done. But that's basically for that. And then the second one would be the forward. And the second one is actually a lot simpler. The second one just means, remember, by default, it implicitly denies everything. Therefore, we have to explicitly allow this direction and accept of traffic, okay? And so we're going to say that number 2 is a rule in forward, oops, to allow the packet through. Okay, so we want to allow the packet through, basically. All right, so those are the two ideas. All right, so you have to think about where you're going to put this rule. Also remember that, you know, usually if you want to accept something, you probably want to have that somewhere in the beginning. All right, so remember it's very sequential. Okay, so the way that so now we can think about, let's think about the rules themselves. Okay, so for the forward rule should be pretty easy. You should be able to write that one already because it's very similar to the other one. So it would be IP tables and then dash I probably, right? Insert into forward at position 2. You know, you have to think about where you're going to insert it. And then you're going to say which interface, so dash I and then ENS 33. Now this is important, right? Because, you know, you have two interfaces in this scenario, right? So which one are you tying this to? Well, it's extremely important that you tie it to that one because that's where it's going to hit first. Okay, that's where it's going to hit first as it's initiating from the outside network. So you specify then, you know, dash I for interface, ENS 33 or whatever it is, ETH0. And then you can specify just the type of packets that you're going to allow. So you can say dash P, TCP, right? In this case, well, yes, because we said we want web, FTP, or SSH, right? So that's dependent on that. And then we're going to say dash dash where the packet has a destination port of, let's say, 22 for SSH, and the destination IP is, let's say, I'm going to make up a number, 172.31.0.23. So then that would be this one over here would be 172.31.0.23. So that's the IP that you're going to specify. So you're literally saying, because you know where the packet is, right? So you're writing this rule here. So the packet already arrived there, right? The packet's already there. Now you just want to know, where do I send this packet that just arrived here? Well, if it's going to port 22 and it's going to this IP here, then I'm going to let it through. Okay, so that's the easier of the tool rules. So then you just say dash this, and then finally dash J, and instead of drop, you're going to say accept, because in this scenario, we want to allow this packet through. Okay? Does this make sense, guys?
Yes.
All right, so that's basically the approach. Okay, and once you have that, then the other rule that we have to specify is the one for the mapping. All right, so that's the second rule that we want to specify. Okay, so now we have to think of that rule and how we're going to do it. So in this case, remember, the second rule has to do with the mapping. Okay, so the mapping basically says whatever arrives here, whatever arrives there, needs to be forwarded to this server and this server only. Okay, so that's really what that rule is about. So I'm going to go ahead and do. All right, so now this one is going to be IP tables. And then you can say dash, you know, A for add or dash I for insert. Let's go with A. And now you're going to say pre-routing And then now, so that's the chain, pre-routing, right? And then you're going to say with the table -t NAT, okay, so the network address translation table. So -t NAT. And then you're going to specify again -I, the interface. Okay, so what interface you're going to be using here. Okay, so this is going to be dependent on your device, right? On the device that you're using. So again, here, you know, if we were using NS33, then, you know, that's sort of the same. So ENS33, okay? All right, so once we, and again, because it arrives, remember that the important thing is what interface does it arrive to? Okay, what interface does it arrive to here? And then once we've done that one, when we specify the interface, then the rest is more straightforward. You're just going to say, you know, the protocol again. So it's going to be, this applies to TCP packets, okay? And then the port, now this is the important thing because this will open up the port on the outside. You're going to say, let's say 4,000. So that basically means that now the router, so now the router okay. This is right. So this is going to be 4,000. Okay. So that's your 4,000 port that is open. So you're listening to port 4,000, okay, on the router itself. So now you can go over here. You specified that it should be listening on port 4,000. And that's it. That's really what it does. So if you think about it, by doing this pre-routing, you're tying this interface and saying that you're listening on that port, the outside interface on port 4,000. Okay. And then once you've done that, then you can specify what to do. So once so now you're going to say once something arrives to port 4,000, you're going to do -J, and instead of accept or drop or everything or anything like that, you're going to do DNAT. Okay, so you're going to do DNAT, which basically just means jumps to a DNAT target, a destination, you know, of the network address translation. So that's basically what it means. You're going to jump somewhere. Okay, so then you're going to say, and then you say basically where you want to jump to. So you use --2. And then finally, the last part of this is to tell it where to go. Well, where we want to go is 172.31.023 on port, let's say 22, right? That's the port that we're setting up SSH, so 22, right? So, and that's it. So now I'm going to go back here and just complete this by saying that the port is going to be here it is, 172.31.023, right? And don't forget the port number. So in this case, it would be colon, right, 22. That's it. So if you think about it, these are the two rules that allow the scenario of port forwarding to happen. So you have your scenario of port forwarding to happen. You come in from the outside. Remember, it is a little bit insecure to do this. Better to do it with VPN, something like VPN. But in this case, let's just think about how it would work kind of manually. So you can come in. Now when it hits this interface, first of all, you do the mapping. So pre-routing, NAT, interface and then receive at port 4000 and send to this one inside. And you guys already know pretty much what you do is you change the packet information, just like in the spoofing. And then, but although you've made the redirection, that doesn't really, imagine that that just changes the packet to be something else. It still needs to go from one interface to the other. And whenever you have that scenario, that is called a forward chain, right? Forward chain. And so you have to then in the forward chain, you have to add the rule to give this permission. And so that's going to be IPTables-I forward to-I ENS33 vertical TCP destination port, this. So any packet that's TCP that's going to service 22 and to that IP accept. So only those packets destined to that server and to that service are allowed through. Okay, so that is basically it, and that's it. I mean, literally you just have to type those commands and that's it. Now to test this, the way that it would work is, like I said, we open a PuTTY here. So in the PuTTY, you would put, let's say that your IP is like 205.215.116.41, right? Now you're not gonna, so in the PuTTY here, you need to put, the IP and the destination port, right? So, let's imagine this is PuTTY. So the question is, what do you put here? Well, you're not going to put the internal IP and the internal 22, right? Because that's not known to you possibly or things like that, right? Instead, you put the external ones. But these external ones, because 205.116.41 is in fact ENS33, right? You specified that in the command over here, right? You did it there and there. So then you don't have to really, that's basically it. So what you do is you take that IP 205.215.116.41 and what would be the port number? Anyone? What would be the port number here? Would it be 4,000 or 22? 4,000. There you go. Pretty good. All right. So it would be 4,000 because that's the external one, and that's it. But you already created the mapping, and that's it. That's how it works, right? And so hopefully that makes sense. Okay, and that's basically it. Any questions about this this scenario? All right, doesn't sound like there's any questions. All right, so that's basically the last one that I wanted to cover, which is a little bit more complex, and it kind of gives us a little bit of the intuition of VPN, which is the final topic for this semester. So this it's a good, I like to think of this as a good transition into VPN. So it gives us a little bit of the intuition of how it works. So there you have the commands. They're there, and that's it. So let me actually save this. I'll post this on the Brightspace. Okay. And let me just save that file. Have it, I'll just call it port forwarding. All right, the next thing we're gonna do, now I'm gonna go back to the, I'm gonna go back to, right, so that actually concludes what I'm gonna record for today. The next thing we're gonna do is I wanna go over the solutions for TCP session, yes, session hijacking, but I'm not gonna record that. So, so I won't be recording. So in conclusion, that was basically IP tables with port forwarding. Also, if you're watching the video, don't forget exam 2 is Tuesday. Okay, it's comprehensive from the beginning of the semester until what we cover today. Also, actually, let me create, before I forget, let me create the link for this homework assignment. So I'm going to go to Brightspace. All right, and in here, so all right, somebody's asking me how many exams do we have in total? We have 3 exams, exam 1, exam 2, and the final exam during finals week. Okay, so now I'm going to, so you guys should be seeing Brightspace. And actually having several exams is good for you guys because it's, it's easy points. So this is the Brightspace environment. Right, and I'm going to go in this module, IP tables, right? Here you have, we've already discussed the problems, IP tables problems. So in here, I'm going to create the new assignment link. So you should be seeing that. So this is, I'm just going to call this IP tables homework. Okay. This is, as I said, this is because we have the exam on the 6th. I'm going to make it due on the 15th. Okay. So the homework will be due on the 15th, by 10 p.m. 15th, so the 17th is, it'll stay open until the 17th. And so complete the attached Word document with the 10 IP tables related problems. All right, so complete the attached Word document with the 10 IP tables related problems. Okay, so I think that's clear enough, I hope. Complete the attached Word document with the 10 IP tables related problems. Okay, so that should be clear enough. So I'm going to save this. And then if we go back to this, remember the document that I mean is this one, IP tables problems. Right, and there they are. So those are the 10. For most of these, you can do them on the VM quite simply, as I explained on Tuesday. Also, I strongly recommend that even though you're not going to do the Raspberry Pi, probably, read all these documents, okay? Make sure you read all of this. There's a lot of details in there that can help you. All right, and that's the link. So that should be it for that. All right, so that concludes, that concludes the IP tables. At this point, I'm done. Next Thursday, I will probably do the rest of the problems for the firewalls lab. So we'll just cover that. And then the last week, we'll cover VPN. So we'll, that's really all we have left, a couple of weeks. So we have about a week to finish up the firewalls and then 1 week just to cover some of the VPN topics. All right, so that should be basically what's in these two. Okay, and these I'll just cover when I close up the lectures, but that's all we have left. All right, at this point then, what I want to do is go over the TCP session hijacking. TCP session hijacking solutions. So for this, I don't want to have that recorded. So let me click on, I'm going to stop recording at this time.